Hello there and welcome to today's edition of GP Notebook Podcasts. These weekly casts are full of bite-sized topics tailored for those in primary care. Perfect for your morning commute or anytime and anywhere. I'm Dr James Waldron, a portfolio GP based in Nottingham. I'm a GP educator, podcaster and co-host of the GP Notebook study groups. You can tune into us on all leading podcast platforms and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you enjoy what you hear, please consider leaving a review. You can stay connected with us on X at GP Notebook for podcasts, updates and much more. And you can also find me at Jammiest Dodgers. Today, I am joined by Dr Naomi Fox, paediatric OT, about harnessing the power of proprioception to improve behaviour, reduce stress and improve sleep. Welcome back, Naomi. It's really great to have you back on the podcast again.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, in part one of the podcast, we were talking a lot about what approaches we can take with children with additional needs, and particularly related to their therapy and helping their family out. And we talked a lot about the importance of community. And one of the things that we're going to explore today is about what else we might be able to do as practitioners to help support our patients. And this is at the core of what you do as an occupational therapist. And it occurred to me actually that throughout my training, we don't often come into contact with occupational therapists. So can you give us a bit of an overview of what it is that you do as a children's OT?
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree, like I didn't come across that many medics as part of my training either. And I think it's actually really important to do the same with
teachers. Important.
Yeah, we often say, I don't know why we haven't given you much training before, but here's some training. So I look at all the things children do every day, and we've looked at that. But whether it's washing, dressing, sleeping, eating, focusing, concentrating, see what children find difficult, why they might find it difficult, and how I can help make it easier. Practically, what that looks like, and we talked a bit about this last time, but I play with children, I do an assessment through play, I use standardized assessments as well as observational assessments, I chat to families. But essentially what I'm trying to do as an OT is look at, what are the functional things that this child or young person and family are finding challenging in their day-to-day life. So that will vary depending on the child or young person who is in front of me. I have seen 14-year-old girls who actually haven't yet had an autism diagnosis, but suddenly have found school really, really tricky, are struggling socially. And we've realised that young person is masking very heavily in school, but at home is having massive, massive meltdowns. And we need to work with that young person to look at, how do they regulate their behaviour? How do we put in place strategies that are going to help their body feel more calm so that they can engage and participate in activity? I might be seeing a 3-year-old who doesn't have any speech, who is non-verbal and has autism, but might not have a diagnosis. Or I might be seeing, a 6-year-old who has cerebral palsy and needs help with day-to-day things like actually learning how to feed themselves because they haven't yet learned how to do that. So my job is amazingly varied, and I get to look at what the specific things are that a family comes to me with, and really just solve that with them. I've had a child who, she was 3 when she first came to me. I've seen her a bit since, but she was refusing to go for a poo in the toilet, and I'm sure you guys come across withholding a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and what we found with her is she just needed a really indirect approach. So I ended up reading her every time she came to clinic a story called Softy the Poo. There's a really brilliant charity called Eric. I don't know if you guys have come across them, but they're a bowel and bladder charity. They've got loads of fantastic resources. But we read this book, Softy the Poo, a few times, and amazingly, just literally through doing that and not making it too much of a pressure thing, she started to use the toilet every day and go by herself. So there are amazing moments where small things like that solve a situation. But in other situations, it might be that we're working for a long time on how do we enable a child to have the best regulation possible so that families get less challenging behaviour, or all sorts of things like that.
Wonderful. I think one of the things that you said on the last podcast that really stuck out to me is that play is a child's primary occupation. Play and learning, and you learn via play. And that really stuck with me. And And just seeing the way and your description there of how you can interact with a child through play and get absolutely amazing outcomes with it. So one of the things we touched on last time, I really want to explore in a bit more detail, is some of the practical strategies that therapists use and that perhaps we could start to introduce as GPs in primary care to help families that are struggling with, for instance, meltdowns. Should we start with that and sort of being overwhelmed?
Yes.
What are your tips for that?
Yeah, a great question. I mentioned last time proprioception, and that's what I'm gonna focus on as an OT.
Yeah,
If there's like one key thing that I could tell people, it'd be like proprioception, heavy work, movement activities. The more movement you do, the better. And I'm always banging on about it. All my friends are like, "Oh, we're still talking about proprioception." I'm like, "Yes, I am." But as we know, like our body, we understand and process the world through our senses. So you have the 5 that everyone knows about: sight, smell, taste, hearing, touch. But then you have your sense of your vestibular sense, so your sense of balance, which is through your inner ear. Just quickly, we know that linear movement is calming. So helping a child bounce up and down or rock backwards and forwards is going to calm their system, whereas rotating and starting and stopping is going to make them more alert. We have it's super interesting.
That's so really interesting.
Sensory processing.
I would never have thought that it would have that impact, just particular movement directions.
Yeah. So it's, there's so much you can go into, but basically it's around the receptors. So the otolith in the ear is like a sponge, and then compared to semicircular canals. Anyway, I could go off on a big tangent.
Well, maybe we'll bring you back and talk purely about that another day. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And then, so proprioception, which is our body awareness. So awareness of where my body is in space. I know without looking if my legs are crossed or not crossed. I can tell you if I've got something in my hands or not. What we know, particularly for children with autism and ADHD, but often a wide range of additional needs, definitely developmental coordination disorder, DCD being that umbrella term that, looks at motor coordination difficulties as opposed to dyspraxia now, which is purely about motor planning. Children with all of these needs often have challenges with their body awareness and their proprioception, so knowing where their body is. And actually what we can do is we can enable families to have really quick and easy practical ideas of how they can give their children proprioceptive heavy work input. So I'd say heavy work or movement activities, all I'm meaning is putting that proprioceptive input through their joints. So we know that our proprioceptors are in our joints. So in any of our joints, that's where those receptors are for our sense of where our body is. If I do something like a downward dog or I go on a run, what I'm doing is I'm giving my body loads of input through my joints, and that gives my whole body the spinning of like, oh, there's my body. And actually we know that is sending signals like right through the thalamus, so top of your brainstem, to your brain. That is enabling you to feel more regulated, both to attend and concentrate more, but also increases your body awareness, which in turn increases your postural control, your body stability, your fine motor skills, because we need postural control to have good fine motor skills, but also our regulation and our ability to focus. And one of the most amazing things about this sense of proprioception and about heavy work activities is that they're both calming and alerting. So I can see a child who is slumped in front of me, won't, zoned out, won't really talk to me. And I can see a child who's bouncing off the walls, jumping up and down, moving around. And I can give them both the same heavy work movement activity. And for both of them, it will bring the child who's, under aroused back up to alert, and it will bring the child who's over aroused back down to alert. And that's the power of proprioception. So with all the other things, that we talked about, vestibular movement and visual input, we know that there are different things that are calming and alerting. So linear and plain geometric shapes are calming, and busy environments are alerting visually, for example. There's loads for all of the different senses, but for proprioception, we know that it's both calming and alerting. So super practically, heavy work movement activities that families can do. Sometimes they won't have equipment. If you can get them to buy a gym ball, then amazing. You want the gym ball to be the size between the child's foot and underneath their knee. So generally 45 centimeters is pretty good for your younger children, but that's the size. So under their knee to their foot. You can do bouncing on a gym ball. Parents can hold a child's hips really firmly. Hips are a key point of control. They can bounce them up and down. They can roll forwards on the gym ball. They can only if a child is lying on their tummy. We don't ever squash children the other way up, but then they can relatively firmly but carefully squash the ball down on their child. That gives lots of deep pressure, heavy work input, and that can help the child feel more calm. But then if they don't have things like a gym ball, like there's lots of strategies without equipment. So giving ourselves a big hug, giving their child a big hug, counting to 10, pushing. If a child's sitting up, you want to think about like posture and alignment. But if a child is sitting up, 90 degrees in their joints, pushing down on their shoulders and counting to 10 can be helpful. Pushing hands together, pulling hands apart. I'm doing it, but obviously you can't see me, but you can hear me.
She's doing that.
Yeah, pushing the wall. So making sure the child is nice and straight. I often say to children, let's see if we can push the wall down. Are you ready? Let's try. And we just hold ourselves there and count to 10. And then I'm normally like, we didn't knock the wall down. Should we try again? But actually, if you try one of these things yourself, like you'll realize that it does make your body feel a bit more awake, and you are then able to focus and concentrate better. It's that feeling of like if you've gone to the gym or gone for a run or chewed gum in the car, your body feels a bit more awake and able to focus, and that's what proprioception does. And you can do it through your mouth as well. I'm sorry, I'm talking for ages.
No. This is absolutely. I'm wrapped because a lot of things are dropping into place now here. So why does yoga make you feel so good? It's not just time for yourself and mindfulness, but actually, this input and proprioception. I enjoy yoga myself, and just coming out of it being like, I feel really good, but I'm not entirely sure why tying myself in knots has made me feel nice.
Yeah, totally, exactly. And it's that because you're getting that proprioception input through your body, like through your thalamus, and it's hitting your thalamus and just helping your awareness of your body and your focus and attention. So we know that the other thing I was going to mention is our mouths. So we know that our mouths are really sensitive areas of our body. Obviously, babies, when they learn, they put lots of things in their mouths. That's because our mouths are sensitive. When we're trying to focus, when I'm doing training, I often make people feel super self-conscious. We often touch our mouths. We often put our hands around our mouths when we're trying to concentrate. So therefore, if we can give this proprioceptive heavy work input to our mouths, that can be massively calming for children, young people, and adults. So crunchy snacks, so I often say to parents, you know what, if you can pick your child up with an apple in your pocket or some carrot sticks in your pocket, or if you get a different water bottle or one of those water bottles they have to chew and suck at the same time, that can really help them to feel more calm. If anyone chews gum in the car, the reason that helps you focus is because you're giving yourself this proprioceptive input, heavy work input through your mouth, like while you're driving, and that's helping you to be able to engage. I had a group of children with autism and ADHD in practice, and we had lots of fun in our sessions. I did lots and lots of movement, proprioception as much as I could at the beginning, and we do lots of climbing because that's really good. We do lots of jumping. You want it to be kind of controlled and regulated, and often I use counting to help. So I often say to parents, you know what, I count low and slow. So I'd count 1, 2, 3 if I was doing a ball squash, for example, because I'm trying to make the whole sensory environment more calming. But I had this group, we did loads of movement, and I'd get them to the table and I'd be trying to teach them about self-regulation. And basically I'd give them all an apple. I'd be like, okay, who can do the biggest bite of their apple? And they'd all take this big bite. And then they would, I'd have like 2 minutes to give them as much input as I possibly could to enable them to start to learn the concept I needed to teach them. But, proprioception is powerful and it can really help with attention.
I think that's amazing, and I think there's again lots of other things dropping into place here. Is that so perhaps why babies find it so comforting to suckle. Like even if they're not it's not entirely the milk they're receiving. It is part of that proprioception is going through their mouths, and then on top of that, it's also this kind of self-soothing helps to explain and understand some of the stimming behaviours that we sometimes see in children with autism.
Yeah, totally. And so stimming often is this sensory seeking need for children to feel, for them to know where their body is. So children who are flapping their hands, that's giving them more of this input of like, oh, okay, there's my hands. And that is feeling calm. It is calming for them. The thing that I always say with stimming is actually if stimming is being used for that purpose and it's enabling a child to feel more regulated, it's generally not something that I specifically would try and stop. If it becomes something that is more challenging, so I've had children who have stimming, when stimming becomes hitting your head or something like that, or biting things, then you need to look at how you change that behavior. So a child who's biting things a lot, I might give them a chewy. There's really brilliant chewies you can get that, and I would say, like I would give them the chewy. So I'd always replace, if you're ever going to try or a parent's ever trying to stop their child doing something, I'd always replace it with one of these proprioceptive kind of regulating sensory activities, because that's what a child needs. We talk as OTs about a sensory diet, so a healthy diet, that we need in terms of food, we need a healthy diet in terms of sensory stuff. So if we can give family support to think about what sensory activities they can do with their children, and if they get the right intensity and frequency throughout the day, that can have a big impact on stuff. So I had a child who wasn't sleeping much at all, and they were low level autism, were non-verbal, but we were trying to look at, okay, what could this child do for self-regulation? How could we support them to regulate themselves and their sensory needs? And we worked with mum, and we got a trampoline for this child, and they ended up going on their trampoline like for a long time. Like, I think they'd be on for ages in the morning, when they got home from school, ages before bed, and it transformed the child's sleep. They were able to self-regulate and sleep much better.
Yeah. I think that brings us on really nicely to the second part of what I was hoping to talk about today, which is around sleep. I think that in terms of the two things we're asked about the most is, one, this kind of emotional regulation, which we've talked about, the power of proprioception. But the second one is sleep and the impact that has on both the child, but also their family. Because as we explored in quite some detail in the previous podcast, the impact on the family is not to be underestimated. So how might we approach sleep? Have you got any tips?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's so many things that you could say and do in terms of sleep. I think so. Interestingly, the biggest thing is it comes back to that proprioception thing. So we know that the more body aware, like the more proprioception we've had, the more aware we are of our bodies, the easier it is for us to get into that deep sleep cycle. So the more likely a child is to sleep through the night, and also the more likely they are to be able to calm their body down enough to switch off. So it sounds quite counterproductive, but often what I say to families is, obviously routine is really important. Like helping families think about bedtime routine can be great. We talked about visuals last time and using visuals as GPs in our sessions, but getting families to use visuals is to help children know what's happening. So, and then using this proprioception. So I might say to a family, actually a really great bedtime routine might be to do, 10 minutes on the trampoline and then the gym ball, and then have a drink through a really thin straw because you're having to suck really hard, and then you do bath time with some calming music, and then you wrap your child in a towel and you squeeze them really tightly, and then you give them that big hug as you settle them down to sleep. So you're thinking about actually building in as much of this movement activity, as much of these calming activities as you can. And often that's quite transformational. Some children find weighted blankets really helpful as well. The guidelines say that if you're using a weighted blanket, you should only use it for 20 minutes whilst your child falls asleep, and then you should take it off. That's because of potential for risk of suffocation and children not being able to move. Yeah. So it's always important to give that recommendation to families if you're recommending them. But that's around our touch input. So we know that light tickly touch is alerting, just like if you brush the hairs on your skin, you'd feel like, ugh. Whereas if you have deep pressure touch, like a whole hand touch, that is more calming. And that deep pressure touch is what the weighted blanket gives. And we can just think about that generally when we're helping children young people as well. Like sometimes if a child is screaming, like we can feel like, oh gosh, they don't want me to come near them, I'm going to kind of be a bit tentative. But actually a whole hand touch when we need to touch a child to examine them or whatever it is, like kind of relatively firm, not hurting a child, but firm touch can make it easier for us to actually, for anyone, children, young people, adults, to be able to process that touch and to be able to then engage in that examination or whatever's going on.
I think that's a fascinating approach towards sleep, and one I wouldn't have thought about. I think that when we learn about sleep, I suppose in a fairly limited amount that we learn about sleep going through GP training, it's all about, we would say, it's all about routine, it's about calming, it's about sleep, screens, it's about looking at, do they need to get up for a wee, it's about bedroom environment, and all of those things are vitally important. But the approach that you mentioned there all makes a lot of sense. Why is receiving a hug so nice? Well, actually, science behind it, and building that in, those physical stimulations, especially if children are taking in information in ways that we may not fully sort of appreciate it, because it's not the way that other people take information. Using those strategies is, I think that's paradigm shifting for a lot of us, I reckon.
Yeah. And I think makes so much difference. Like, for adults and children, anyone, thinking about how we use this as a strategy to help enable sleep and enable regulation for the body.
So I think it really feels like focusing on sleep, because of course if they're better rested, then the behaviours like to improve as well. And of course, it's going to improve on family interactions as well. So is there, apart from what we've talked about there about proprioception, is there any other suggestions that you might give us to help children get to sleep, or any unintended benefits?
Yeah.
Better sleep.
I think all the things you've already mentioned are also super important. So thinking about routine, thinking about environment, thinking about screens. I think motivation important too. I had a 12-year-old who wasn't sleeping, causing the family lots of challenges. We had a kind of almost a motivational interviewing type conversation where we looked at, why it might be good to look at sleep, and we actually in our session wrote a sleep routine down together and looked at how some of those movement strategies, but also what she could do to help her be able to manage her sleep. And she then they came back the next week being like, you won't believe it, our family life's been transformed. Like, she slept, and mum was like beside herself,
and mum
happy.
Slept as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it does have a big impact on the whole family if we can help with things like sleep. And there's more complex, for children who are really struggling, like looking at environment and safety, there's kind of sleep systems, obviously depending on the child's needs, that you can get, and you can refer to social services OT for that. So that is worth knowing. Like in some localities it's the same occupational therapy team, but in some localities you have a separate social services and separate community OT team, and actually the social services team might be able to assess and look at sleep systems or kind of equipment that may be helpful for a child around that.
That's great. I mean, we started this talk talking about actually how infrequent OTs and GPs encounter each other, except via letter and during their training, or even sort of in professional life. But I've learned so much here, and I think stuff that we can really use in primary care in the proprioception aspect and sleep, because these things are so important for calming and sort of regulating behaviour.
Yeah, totally.
So thank you so much, Naomi. It's been a really fascinating time together today. So you've mentioned sort of reaching out to OTs. Have you got any other sources of support people might be able to look up if they want to find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. People are welcome to look on our website, so growinghope.org.uk. We have a podcast actually as well of like strategies and ideas specifically for families. So like really bite-sized, okay, how do you help your child with sleep? How do you help your child with behaviour? But also we have parent training that we do. We support families, and then there are lots of other charities and resources available. So, there's parent liaison support groups, there's support groups specific to different additional needs that can be really helpful for families as well. Also, if anyone wants to look more at Growing Hope and who we are, we really love to hear from you. We're looking all the time for churches across the country. Our vision is to have 20 clinics in partnership with churches by 2030. And at the moment, we've got 4 locations across the country, but we'd really like to grow that. So happy to hear from anyone that's interested.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again, Naomi. It's been really wonderful listening to you today. And I think that our GP listeners are going to find some really useful things today and in the previous podcast as well. It'd be great to have you back in the future if you'd like to come, because there's so much more we can explore here, and I think lots more info.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, James. Pleasure
Thank
to be
you so
here.
much. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in, everyone. We hope you found it useful and entertaining. This is the second of my discussions with Dr. Fox, so if you missed the first, why not take a listen? For additional information and links related to this episode, visit GPnotebookpodcast.com. If you found this episode enjoyable, remember to hit that follow button and perhaps leave a like and a review. Connect with us on social media at GP Notebook, or drop us an email if you have any questions, feedback or suggestions for future episodes. Visit our revamped website to find out more about GP Notebook Pro, to enrol in our virtual GP Notebook study groups and access resources and tips aimed at enhancing patient care in primary care. So, until next time, take care of yourself, smile and harness the power of proprioception, and we'll catch you soon.